Hello and welcome to the Penalty Box Perspective podcast. Matt here with you today. Nathaniel unable to make it, so it's going to be myself flying solo, bringing you another slightly shorter episode today as all the teams up and down the NHL play out their final few games. We are going to be back with our final breakdown of all the NHL action for the 25-26 season next week, once all the teams have played their games. Who made the playoffs, who missed out, who finds themselves in the best position in relation to the draft lottery. But today, like I said, slightly shorter episode I'm going to be bringing you today. And what I thought we would do is, as the regular season comes to a close and we start to have sort of one eye on the playoffs and the end of the season, I thought I'd go over the top 10 ranked draft picks ahead of the 2026 NHL Draft to see how they've performed, how their rankings have gone up and down, their pros, their cons, where we can expect to see some of these guys shake out in the draft. So I've been doing my research, gone around multiple scouting report sites to try and collate this top 10 and see sort of where we are ahead of the 2026 draft. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in to number one, and it is Gavin McKenna, okay? This is someone who me and Nathaniel have spoken about at length this year, the McKenna sweepstakes, as we've called it. It has been close with number two in terms of the rankings, and I'm going to get to him shortly. But McKenna, left winger, 6 foot tall, 170 pounds, so a little on the lighter side, playing at Penn State in the NCAA as a true freshman this year. He played 35 games with 15 goals, 36 assists. That's for 51 points as a true freshman in the NCAA this year. Absolutely outstanding. Started a little on the slow side, but really picked things up as the season went on. Obviously, he was sidelined through the, or kind of blindsided, so to speak, with all the kind of police issues, kind of after the outdoor game that Penn State played this year, which did cause him, obviously, some problems, but he was able to bounce back from that. Obviously, that's all been resolved now, so he was able to just focus on his hockey, and he's been absolutely outstanding this year. He's an elite playmaker, as evidenced by his 36 assists in 35 games, and also the way that Gavin McKenna is able to manage the tempo of the game. He can speed it up, he can slow it down when needed. He really controls the speed and the tempo of the game when he's got the puck. He's also got elite stick handling as well. Just an absolute cerebral playmaker. A lot of comparisons being made to the likes of Nikita Kucherov, which, whichever team it is who ends up, picking number one overall, whether it be Vancouver or Chicago, Calgary, New York, or any of the other teams, if they make a jump in the lottery standings, they would be getting someone who can jump into the NHL straight away and be impactful right off the rip. In terms of his areas to work on, his defensive play has been highlighted as a slight kind of weakness to his game. I think that's always to be expected with someone who is so sort of offense driven, and that's almost something that you're willing to kind of sacrifice, forgo. You look at players over the years like Patrick Kane and Kucherov, even not the greatest defensive players in the world, but you're willing to kind of put that aside for what they can provide in an offensive manner. The other main criticism I could see from the other scouting reports around for Gavin McKenna was he can sometimes go missing in games for large periods of time because he tends to sort of play around the perimeters a bit more. He doesn't tend to get right up to the net front and get himself sort of right in amongst all the bodies, which is maybe something that he will have to adapt in his game when he makes the jump to the NHL. Maybe something you can get away with a bit more at the NCAA level, but maybe not as much when he goes to the pro game. I mean, McKenna and the number two pick here, I mean, they've been jostling for this all year. I think any team who takes McKenna at number one, I think that's a really safe pick. Really safe pick, and they will be getting an absolute stud. Moving into number two then is the Swede Ivar Stenberg, okay? Left winger, right winger, he's played both this year. 6 foot, 182 pounds. This year playing for Frölunda in the SHL, so in the top division in Sweden. 33 points across 43 games with 11 goals and 22 assists. So maybe not as high as a point production as McKenna, but it's always really important when we look at these guys who play in the European leagues, especially, that they're playing amongst men. You know, they're playing against guys in their, late 20s, 30s, guys with a lot of physicality, with a lot of experience. And for Stenberg to be able to hang at that kind of productivity, absolutely outstanding. You know, he's had a great year. He's an absolute tactician, a great playmaker. His edge work on his skates is absolutely, phenomenal. He gets, his ability to change direction quickly and keep the defense guessing all the time is absolutely outstanding. The areas of improvement that were identified for him was maybe to add a little bit of physical strength, as well as maybe just adding an extra yard to his initial burst of speed. He's not slow by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe his acceleration and his ability to reach his top speed quicker is something that he could maybe work on, and that is something that will help him adjust to the North American game as he goes to the NHL. And the comparison that I was seeing for Ivar Stenberg is someone of the likes of Mitch Marner. So a great playmaker, someone who can impact at both ends of the ice. He has also been relatively defensively responsible whilst he's been playing for Frölunda this year. And it really is sort of a toss-up between McKenna and Stenberg for these 1-2 positions. I actually believe that the most ideal position to land in the draft lottery for any team this year is at number 2. I think sports fans as a whole, we're always into comparisons, and I think whichever team takes that number 1 pick, they will forever be compared one to the other. And I think if you land at number 2, I think that pick is easy. I think you take whichever one is still available. So if Stenberg goes 1, you take McKenna at 2. If McKenna goes at 1, you take Stenberg at 2. It's a slam dunk pick regardless. Super exciting player. Really he's just been so impressive. And playing in a way in the SHL that isn't often seen by players of his age. And really excited to see what he can do. Again, someone who you imagine will jump into the NHL right away and begin his professional career in North America anyway, almost immediately. Okay, so moving into the number 3 pick, and this is where it kind of drops off a little. Now, I have seen this player ranked kind of within that top 3. But there is a little bit of a gap, and he's almost kind of in a little division of his own here, and that's Keaton Verhoff, the right defenseman, right shot, 6'4", 212 pounds, so a much bigger body. Playing at the University of North Dakota this year, he played 35 games with 6 goals and 14 assists. That's 20 points on the year for Keaton Verhoff. His offense and his puck handling is absolutely fantastic, as well as his defensive play. He's 6'4". He's got that big reach. So he's someone who really is a true two-way defenseman, and someone who can really strongly impact at both ends of the ice. Now, interestingly, Keaton Verhoff is someone who, in listening to draft analysts talk about him, he's only been playing as a defenseman for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. He actually started his career as a goaltender when he was a kid, and made the transition to playing on defense around the age of, I think it was around 12, 13. So he maybe doesn't have as much experience. The one of the main kind of areas of improvement I saw for Verhoff was that his back skating maybe needs a little bit of work, and he just needs a little bit of refinement as a whole. He's a little bit raw. Probably isn't someone who's going to jump into the NHL straight away, and for what it's worth, I don't think any of the remaining players are going to be straight into the league. I think they'll all need at least a year before we see them play in the NHL for their respective teams. Got comparisons of the likes of like Moritz Seider or Aaron Ekblad, and it's always important with these comparisons that is kind of like a best case scenario. Now, if you were to get someone like an Aaron Ekblad or a Moritz Seider out of Keaton Verhoff, you are adding an elite defenseman, a true number one, who can be on that blue line for a long time. And I think with defensemen especially, and we have got a few more defensemen within this list, is Matthew Schaefer has kind of warped the perception of teenage defensemen, and he's come into the league and he's been absolutely outstanding. I mean, for me, he's an absolute lock for the Calder Trophy this year as the league's best rookie. Teenage defensemen coming into the NHL and making immediate impacts and playing at levels that we see from Schaefer this year is really uncommon. I mean, we've seen how many records he's broken this year. All I would say to any fan of a team that drafts Keaton Verhoff, or in fact any of the defensemen on this list, is just be patient. Give them time. Defensemen usually blossom a little later than forwards do, just because it's a bit more of a complex game. Obviously, they've got more responsibilities, in that kind of defensive manner, whilst a forward can kind of drop right into the NHL a little bit quicker. But yeah, he's a really exciting player, and I think will be a great pick at number 3 for whoever it is who lands him. The fourth pick then, so 4 and 5, also defensemen. But we're going to start with pick number 4, and that's Chase Reed, the American, another right defenseman, 6'2", 187 pounds. So a little lighter, a little bit of a smaller frame than Verhoff. Been playing for the Sioux Greyhounds this year in the OHL, so within the Canadian juniors, and the OHL typically deemed to be the best in terms of quality, in terms of the teams there, the players there. It's the league to play in. 45 games played with 18 goals and 30 assists for 48 points as a whole on the season. Now, Chase Reed is someone who has elite offense. His size and his skating as well has also been a real strong point to his game this year. Obviously, he does need to be maybe put a little bit more weight on, a little bit more muscle, just so he can adapt to the physicality of NHL forwards. Obviously, it's a lot different when you're playing against teenagers within the Canadian juniors and within the OHL. His poise and his control is another area of his game that was deemed to be kind of really elite, and he's someone who is going to be a really impactful team, especially impactful player, especially in an offensive manner. His main areas for improvement is his defensive work. He's been described as a little bit of a defensive risk at times. He has the tendency to maybe give the puck up a little bit too easily at times, gives over a couple of sort of sloppy turnovers, as well as his sort of consistency in a defensive manner as well. So certainly not someone who can't defend, but someone who is offense first, and has been compared to the likes of Adam Fox or even Zach Werenski, which, I mean, if you're able to get a Zach Werenski out of Chase Reed, that'd be absolutely sensational. But someone like Adam Fox is someone who I think kind of fits the profile of Chase Reed really well. Someone who you can put in that top pair, who could provide offense, would be great on the power play, and someone who'd be a real asset. And he's someone who's draft stock has certainly risen this year. He's been at times sort of ranked earlier in the season, sort of around that 7, 8, 9 region, but he's really moved up into this sort of top 5, ahead of the draft. So he's had a really nice rise throughout the year, and he's played really well. The fifth player in these rankings is Alberts Smits, the Latvian left defenseman, 18 years old, 6'3", 205 pounds, playing for Jukurit in the Finnish league this year in the Liga. 38 games played with 6 goals and 7 assists, so that's 13 points. Now, again, this is a boy playing in a man's league, so the production in terms of his points isn't necessarily kind of what you would expect with the likes of Reed and Verhoff, for example. But he's someone who is a defensive juggernaut. This kid just oozes confidence. He's got great physicality at his age already. His reach is really good as well with the stick. And he also represented Team Latvia at the Olympics in Milan. So he's already got a really good level of experience, in terms of where he's at in his development. And I actually think of Smits, Verhoff, and Reed. I actually think Smits personally is probably the most likely of the three to sort of be impactful at the NHL level a bit quicker. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to hit a ceiling of those guys. He's been compared again to the likes of Moritz Seider as well as people like Bowen Byram. Again, it's consistency for him. Always the case with defensemen, especially those playing in sort of a men's league. You will have off nights. And again, it's just a case of how he can adjust the tempo of the game from the European game in Finland to the North American game in the NHL. But regardless, is a really exciting player and someone who, I was keeping a really close eye on during the Olympics, and he was super impressive there as well. Was one of the standout players on that Latvian team. Really, really impressive there. And would be a great pick for any team sort of landing in that top five. And that moves us into the sixth pick, which, as it's ranked at the moment, is Caleb Malhotra, 17 years old, Canadian centre, 6'2", 183 pounds, playing at the Brantford Bulldogs in the OHL. Now, in terms of point production, he's had a great year. 67 games played with 29 goals and 55 assists. That's 84 points in 67 games. The Brantford Bulldogs have had a fantastic team in the OHL. They've had the likes of Jake O'Brien. They've had Marek Vanaka, some really, really good players, and they've had a really, really competitive team within the OHL. They've been great. Now, the big key with Caleb Malhotra is his offensive IQ. He's a really, really not necessarily the quickest, but he almost doesn't need to be. He sees the game 1 to 2 steps ahead of where the play is. I mean, that was the main criticism of his game, was that he's not the quickest and doesn't necessarily have elite levels of speed. He's been compared with the likes of Anton Lundell on the Florida Panthers, and what you would potentially get from someone like Caleb Malhotra is an elite second line center. Maybe it'd be a stretch to maybe say you'd be putting him on the top line in those top matchups, but for him to be within that second line would be absolutely outstanding. He's someone who's put up some great offensive production. Maybe needs another year or two before he maybe makes the jump to the professional game. It might be someone who maybe starts in the AHL before sort of moving up to the NHL, just to get a bit more season in and to make sure that he's worked on his skating and his speed. Something that we have seen players can do. Certain players really have been able to add an extra yard of pace to their game, and he'd be a really, really solid pick there. For any team landing sort of in and around that sixth position. The next player in this list, number 7, also a centre, Tynan Lawrence, 6 foot tall, 185 pounds, playing at Boston University. Now, he did transfer there mid-season, so he only played 18 games for Boston University in the NCAA. 18 games played with 2 goals and 5 assists, so 7 points. Again, consistency is something that he needs to work on, as well as, again, his acceleration. So he's not necessarily slow, but he could be maybe quicker in getting to his top speed. But his mobility, his two-way play, he's someone who's been used in all situations for Boston University this year, on the power play, on the penalty kill, great at 5-on-5 as well. Doesn't necessarily have the point production, but someone who you can trust in all situations and be almost like a bit of a special team expert is kind of NHL max comparison was the likes of Dylan Larkin on the Detroit Red Wings, which would be fantastic if he was able to reach that. I just hope teams don't get kind of caught up in the whole he's only 6 foot tall sort of thing. I mean, he's already 185 pounds, so he's a bit of a thicker, 6 foot. I mean, Gavin McKenna in himself is only 6 foot and only 170 pounds, so he's got kind of 15 pounds of weight on Gavin McKenna at the moment, and I'm sure he will continue to add some size to his game. But yeah, that acceleration is something that will really help him make the jump to the NHL and will really be a bit of a separator. But his general mobility on the puck is absolutely fantastic. Very akin to Larkin, the way he turns, the way he uses his body when he's got the puck, and in terms of getting to the good areas as well, where he knows the offense is going to be. So yeah, again, he made that transition halfway through the season. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes back to Boston University next year to continue his development there and maybe in a bit more of an established role within the team. But yeah, Tin and Lawrence, a great player within this draft. Probably again someone you'd be looking at as an elite kind of second line center. The number 8 pick in here is Carson Krells. Another defenseman, left shot, 6'2", 194 pounds, playing in the WHL this time for the Prince George Cougars. So in terms of the kind of rankings of the Canadian junior leagues, you've got generally the OHL, then the WHL, and then usually the QMJHL. That's not to say that players from the Q or from the WHL aren't good players. There are some absolutely fantastic players there. I mean, we saw Connor Bedard play in the WHL for Regina. There's been some fantastic players coming out of the Q in the last few years, especially. But he played 58 games this year for the Prince George Cougars, getting 20 goals and 50 assists. That's for 73 points as a defenseman. His two-way play, one of the big sort of parts of his game, as well as his skating, his vision. He's someone who, again, is another sort of two-way defenseman. Maybe someone similar to maybe like Keaton Verhoff, but obviously on the left side. But an exciting player nonetheless. The biggest kind of drawback I was seeing to his game was sometimes his decision making is maybe not the best that it could be, and that is both offensively and defensively. Obviously, when he's playing at a level above his peers in the WHL, obviously it hasn't impacted his production that much. He's still got 73 points in 58 games. And I've seen comparisons for Krells as being along the lines of Jake Sanderson, maybe even Gus Forsling. Which again, someone who's mobile, quick, really a real solid asset offensively for any team, but also defensively responsible enough that he's not kind of an offense only kind of guy. Someone like Chase Reed, for example. A good option for any team. Obviously, 194 pounds. You'd like to think he's going to put a little bit of size onto his frame, just to make him sort of a little bit more physical. He's kind of got a bit more of a wiry kind of build at the moment, but nevertheless, someone who will again definitely need a bit more time, a bit more seasoning, and we probably won't see Krells in the NHL for probably 2 seasons at least, maybe even 3. Just if teams wanted to almost over marinate a player, which I think for defensemen there's absolutely nothing to be gained from bringing them into the NHL and putting them in positions where they're going to struggle. It can be really damaging to a defenseman's sort of development as a whole if they're put in situations where they're constantly just kind of fighting for their life, and it can be a real struggle for them. And that moves into number 9. Now, this is a really interesting player for me, and someone who I'm really interested to see where he goes, because I've seen this player moving up and down the draft rankings all season. I've seen this guy ranked as high as sort of 4, and as low as sort of 10 or 11. So he's someone who polarizes a lot of opinion, and that's Ethan Belchets. Now, he's a bit of a unicorn in this top 10 as he's a left winger, 6'5", 227 pounds. So a big body, a proper power forward, playing for the Windsor Spitfires in the OHL. 57 games played with 34 goals, 25 assists. That's for 59 points. So playing at over a point per game. Now, obviously for Belchet, his size is already a massive separator. He's big. He's got a real heavy shot, a deceptive shot. And that's why he's been able to score the goals that he has. He's also a really agile skater for someone of his size, someone who you maybe a little bit kind of unexpectedly. I think it kind of catches a few guys off guard, and his ability to create space, especially in the offensive zone, is a really good, a really solid aspect to his game. Obviously, he's not the fastest, and his speed is something that I know has been not a cause of concern. Obviously, because he's still got the size, he's got the frame, he's a proper power forward. But if he was able to add an extra yard of speed to his skating, that would really go a long way to turning him from a really good NHL prospect into an elite NHL prospect. Being compared to the likes of Brady Tkachuk and Jamie Benn, which if you were able to get that kind of player out of him, that'd be absolutely fantastic. A really solid sort of secondary scoring option, on a deep team. I'm really interested to see how Belchet's develops, and how he goes sort of into following his draft year and how his progression improves then. And I'm really kind of excited to see him jump to the NHL. Reminds me a lot of Porter Martone, who we've seen come into the league this year with Philly in the last couple of games. He's been really impressive since he's come in. Obviously another sort of big physical body, another power forward. So someone who's a good comparison there. Again with a nice heavy shot and can score plenty of goals. His defensive play is something that, again, I think has been an area of his game that maybe needs a little bit of work. And I think that more kind of correlates to using his size and his power in the defensive zone. He maybe doesn't kind of use it as much as he maybe could do. And again, me and Nathaniel talk about it all the time, about there's a difference between being big and playing big. You see certain guys who are big skaters, but not necessarily playing like a wrecking ball out there. And that's not to say that he needs to go out there and be Tom Wilson. But if he can maybe add a little bit more physicality to his defensive play, especially, again, that would be the difference between him being a solid good prospect to a really, really exciting prospect. And that moves us into the final prospect on this list. Now, this player is Viggo Bjork, another guy playing in the SHL this year. He's been playing on Djurgårdens. As a Chicago fan, I've been keeping a strong eye on Djurgårdens this year. Obviously, that's where Anton Frondell has just arrived from. 5'10", 172 pounds. So immediately, again, we see it all the time where NHL teams will see a guy who's 5'10", 172 pounds, and they'll start to panic. All I would say to that is look at Cole Caulfield. He's on the precipice of a 50-goal season, constantly being criticised in his younger at the start of his career for being undersized. You look at the likes of Alex DeBrincat as well. Young, smaller, lighter players can still make an impact in this league, and they can be really, really solid players. And Bjork is someone who has shown really, really strong playmaking this year. He's only picked up kind of 9 assists, but again, this is a guy who, with his lighter frame at the moment, has been playing as an 18-year-old in a men's league, obviously really, really physical league in Sweden as well. They really put an emphasis with defensemen on them being big, them being powerful, them being more almost like stay-at-home, kind of typical defenseman in that regard. But his hockey IQ as well is something that is something that we talk about all the time, and is something that I think can often be viewed as a little bit sort of vague in terms of what do you actually mean by hockey IQ. And I think generally what the terms is knowing where to be and seeing passes before they before they happen. And it was something that Wayne Gretzky especially was absolutely phenomenal at. He knew where the puck was going to be before anyone else on the ice, and that was why he was able to get to those spots and obviously be the greatest of all time. seen comparisons for Viggo Bjork for the likes of Lucas Raymond, Logan Stankoven. So again, you'd be looking at maybe a second line kind of secondary scoring option there. Obviously, he needs to add a little bit of size to his game. He's probably not going to get much taller, but if he can, build a little on his frame a little bit, just so he's not going to get kind of pushed around a lot. And also, he's someone who maybe doesn't have the elite levels of speed that you would maybe expect from someone of his size. He can also maybe sometimes rush plays a little bit as well, almost as though he's seeing stuff a bit too quickly. And he can kind of end up sort of rushing his decisions a little bit. Now, one of the biggest aspects of Bjork's game is his compete level. And I think that comes from his size, probably being underestimated a lot. He might be 5'10", he might be 172 pounds, but he fights tooth and nail out there for every single battle. He's not afraid to get stuck in. He's got really, really high compete level, really high energy level. Not someone you see sort of backing out of board plays or checks or anything like that. He gets really, really involved in the play, doesn't go missing. And yeah, I think he's another sort of really, really interesting prospect. So with that in mind, that kind of rounds out the top 10 sort of ranked players at this time. Now, obviously, as we move closer to the draft, guys move up and down. There's probably some guys in this list that I haven't covered. And I'm sure me and Nathaniel will be kind of touching on the draft class again before the draft happens. But regardless, I'm super excited for the NHL draft, as I am every year. Really excited to see how things fall in the lottery. Where will McKenna end up? Where will Stenberg end up? Verhoff, and will Stenberg and McKenna make immediate jumps to the NHL? I just think it's super exciting, and it's going to be really good to see kind of how it all pans out. We'll be back at the start of next week on either Monday or Tuesday. Got a really, really exciting episode coming up. We've got a guest coming on. I'm not going to reveal anything just yet. You're going to have to tune in. You're going to have to wait and see. But it's a guest I'm super excited to talk to. Great guy. Really looking forward to being able to sit down and talk some hockey with him. But like I said, me and Nathaniel will be back at the back end of next week, covering off the rundown of the final batch of NHL games, and we'll have our final standings, we'll have our playoff trees, we'll be all ready to go ahead of the NHL playoffs. As always, guys, you can find us on both X and Instagram at the PBP Podcast. You can also find us on TikTok at Penalty Box Perspective. If you want to get in contact with us via email, you can do so at penaltyboxperspective@gmail.com. You can also watch the podcast in video format if you just want to see me on my own, on both Spotify as well as YouTube as well, on the Penalty Box Perspectives official YouTube channel. Please feel free to go and like and subscribe there. If you would like to drop us a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it'd be much appreciated, guys. Honestly, it really helps me and Nathaniel. We're coming up to the end of our first season, and like I said at the end of last week's show, we have loved every minute of doing the Penalty Box Perspective in its first year. Have absolutely loved kind of every second of learning and covering the NHL and bringing it to from the perspective of a UK fan. Make sure you tune in next time, guys. Thank you very much for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy.